Georgie.
Do they float?
Oh, yes. They float. And when you're down here with me, you float down! You're gonna die, clown!
Clowns. What do you think of them?
They're funny. They're fucking funny.
Do they make you laugh?
Do they make you laugh?
If you don't give me a good reason why you don't like clowns, I'm going to come back here and kill your whole goddamn family. It seems to me that one of the most prevalent tropes in modern horror is the evil clown, the creepy clown, the killer clown, whatever you want to call it.
Scary clown.
Demonic clown. There's really no one phrase for it.
The funny clown.
To the point where I think it's actually overdone right now. However, there has been a pretty big movie. I really think it is the horror event of the Halloween season. Just when I thought we were, as a culture, getting tired of the creepy clown, here comes the new version of It. Huge hit. It's already one of the highest-grossing horror films in film history. And now the killer clown is back to the forefront of the horror genre. What's your general thoughts on the whole idea of the evil clown?
Where the fuck did it start? I even remember there was one of my birthday parties where we had a clown. She came with balloons, and it was a blast. I don't know when a clown became... I guess the better question is, why is a clown scary?
These are all things I have written here because we're not really doing an episode so much about killer clown movies because there are a lot of them and most of them are bad. We do have about 5 or 6 movies we want to talk about. Overall, I am just interested in the cultural concept of the clown. That's why I love horror, because you can see the evolution of these ideas so clearly. So you were never afraid of clowns as a kid?
No.
A lot of people are. A lot of people are.
Were you?
Not really. I never had much contact with clowns as a child. You said you had a birthday party with a clown. I never had anything like
I think I even went as a clown for Halloween one year.
Closest experience with a clown as a kid, we went to the circus, and there were clowns there at the circus. I was never afraid of them. I've mentioned this before. I have a sister who's a decade older than me, and as a teenager, she was going through a big Stephen King phase. I probably mentioned this on the Stephen King episode. She used to chase me around the house with her paperback copy of Pet Sematary. There was this evil cat on the cover that scared the shit out of me. And then she also had the paperback of It. Creepy clown on that cover. It didn't scare me, but it did make me uncomfortable. Normal clowns, non-benevolent clowns, never frightened me. I was never afraid of Ronald McDonald.
He gives off a kid rapey vibe.
Well, the first time I can remember hearing about somebody being afraid of clowns, there is actually a word for it, holophobia. The word has kind of an interesting origins, too. It's not a real Greek term. There's no actual Greek word for clown. The kolo root word comes from the Greek word for stilt walker, which I guess they figured was the closest equivalent.
I used to have a shirt that said coulrophobia.
Yeah,
yeah. It on the back.
Yeah, I remember that shirt. The first time I can remember hearing about somebody being afraid of clowns, this is a real obscure reference here. Back in the day, Cartoon Network used to have a block of cartoons that were hosted by hand puppets. I don't know if you remember this. They were little hand puppets that had eyes on the people moving their thumbs up and down like they were mouths.
Oh, yeah.
One of the little hand puppets would talk about being afraid of clowns. And that is the first time I can remember hearing anybody being afraid of clowns. It seems like everybody's afraid of clowns. That's the default reaction to clowns these days. I don't think people even remember they were supposed to be funny.
I just don't understand why a clown is scary.
There are some reasons why people are afraid of clowns. The clown itself is somebody who tricks people, fools them, or sometimes just an asshole to them for no reason. There's that element to it, and that makes a little sense. Most phobias are rooted in childhood. Clowns are very brightly colored, and they're loud and obnoxious. You could see how a child would be afraid of that, possibly. Something that's sort of interesting, in my opinion, clowns fall into the uncanny valley. Now, are you familiar with this theory?
No.
The uncanny valley is a term they use in reference to robotics. Something can look not human up to a certain point and be fine. There's this point where it can look so close to human you don't even know it's not human. But in between those 2 points, there's what they call the uncanny valley, where it looks just human enough, but you know it's something that isn't human, and this is very disturbing to people. It's the same reason people are afraid of dolls, and a lot of people think it goes back to a primal fear of corpses, because a corpse is something that looks human but isn't alive, and dolls similarly look human but aren't alive. And a clown is kind of the inverse of that. It is human, but it doesn't look human. The clown makeup, it exaggerates the size of the lips and the size of the eyes, and then they wear the big gloves or the big shoes that further exaggerate the frame of the human body. From a psychological perspective, how that it can be disconcerting in a way that maybe people aren't even aware of. Some people have present the theory that people don't like clowns because they just remind them of pedophiles. There are these adult men or women who are always around kids. Something about that proximity makes people uncomfortable, and I have no doubt that there have been some sexual predators in the clown business, because sexual predators who prey on children will always put themselves in a situation where they can get close to kids. So I think those are maybe some of the reasons why people are afraid of clowns.
Popcorn goes pop, 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 pop.
Insightful.
I think you're reading too much into it. It's a man with face paint on. Punch your kid in the balls and make him grow a pair and teach him to be mean to clowns.
Return the meanness.
Yeah, return the meanness.
You don't think that maybe that's sending not the best message to kids?
It's totally sending the wrong message to kids.
His fool, or professional jester, was not only a fool, however. His value was trebled in the eyes of the king by the fact of his being also a dwarf and a cripple. In Hopfrog, this was the fool's name, he possessed a triplicate treasure in one person.
Something of a literary origin for the creepy clown. We were talking about it recently, and somebody said Stephen King's It was probably the thing that popularized the evil clown in the modern age, and I'm sure it is. But what was the origin of the creepy clown? And the first thing I thought of was the opera Pagliacci, which was first performed in 1892, was composed by Rogerio Linacavaglio. Familiar with the plot of Pagliacci, JD?
No.
Typical opera, a man who happens to be a clown. Pagliacci is the Italian word for clown. His lover is untrue to him, cheats on him, and he goes crazy and murders both her and her lover. It's the plot. It's the short version. But it turns out there's actually an even earlier precedence for the evil clown than that. It's an Edgar Allan Poe story from 1849 called Hopfrog, which is about a little person jester who is mocked and tormented by the king and then takes his revenge eventually. Yeah, so that's the literary origin of the evil clown, as far as I can tell. Well, assuming you consider a jester a substitute of a clown anyway. I think it is.
God, it goes back that far.
Yeah, interesting to think about. There really is nothing new under the sun. It makes a good dramatic irony, something that's supposed to be a source of joy and laughter instead being a source of terror. And I think that's the main reason a lot of people have returned to it over the years. Lon Chaney played clowns twice in his career. In 1924, he started a movie called He Who Gets Slapped, which is a silent thriller about a man who is humiliated and then begins a career as a clown and later gets a chance to get revenge on the people who ruined him. And then in 1928, he started a movie called Laugh, Clown, Laugh, which is actually not a horror film. It's a straight-up melodrama, though the clown in that does become a little mentally unhinged. And Lon Chaney had this amazing quote about clowns that said, "In the daylight, a clown is a source of laughter and joy. But if that same clown appeared on your doorstep at midnight, it'd be a different story."
Which is where the movie Clown at Midnight was from.
Yeah, they made a slasher film in the late 90s called The Clown at Midnight that used that as a title. Not a bad film. Kind of like that movie. Where do you think the Joker falls on the spectrum of the evil clown? Is the Joker really a clown?
He refers to himself as the Clown Prince of Crime.
It's true. He does.
So if he refers to himself as that, then he is that.
Hadn't thought of that. He does have the white face and the green hair and red lips. That's a character that goes back to the 40s. And anybody who knows comics history and horror history knows that the Joker was inspired by Universal silent film
The Man Who Laughs,
which was based off a Victor Hugo story. Conrad Veidt's character in that actually is not a clown. He's a sideshow performer who was deformed by gypsies when he was a baby, so he has this permanent rictus grin on his face. The Joker definitely had an influence on the pop culture image of the evil clown, especially in the post-Ledger years when that character became really popular. And outside of that, there was, of course, a very famous serial killer who dressed as a clown.
Yeah, John Wayne Gacy, right?
John Wayne Gacy.
Was it like Pego the Clown?
Pogo the Clown.
Pogo the Clown.
Yeah, John Wayne Gacy was a serial killer who killed 34 people between 1972 and 1978.
Right?
Most of them were teenage boys, prostitutes, or runaways, and he would abduct them and take them back to his home. He liked to strangle his victims, and after they were dead, he would bury the bodies in his crawl space under his house. Actually, the smell of all the decomposing corpses is one of the things that gave him away. Love the look on your face right now.
Well, I'm thinking, did he rape those teenage boys?
He frequently did. Many of his victims were sexually assaulted.
Before or after they were dead?
Before.
Oh, so he wasn't a total weirdo.
I don't think Gacy was a necrophile, just a rapist and a serial killer.
Oh, okay. I can hang out with that guy. But I would need to like totally fucking blitz to hang out with a necrophile.
Well, another thing with Gacy is he was beloved by his neighbors. He was very well liked. He was a figure in the community. He would indeed dress up as a clown and go to hospitals to sick children and entertain them. Interesting side note about Gacy's clown career, he painted triangles around his eyes. Apparently the official clown rulebook says you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to have any sharp shapes. That could be upsetting to young children. Maybe says something about the personality he was hiding from people time that he did that. Gacy never murdered people while dressed as a clown. That's something that some people assume happened. But no, he never actually did that. That was definitely an event that had an effect on the changing pop culture perception of what clowns are.
I agree.
This is something that's really interesting to me. In the early 80s, there was this string of what they call phantom clown sightings. It began in 1981 in Massachusetts, where kids claim that a man dressed as a clown was attempting to lure them into his vehicle. And this led to a hysteria all throughout the country. There were sightings in Arizona and New Jersey. There was even one in Honduras in 1995. Obviously, the evil clown thing goes back a lot further than perhaps we think.
The clowns are chasing us up here.
On Facebook, they said there was killer clowns around here that were killing people.
We saw a man with an all-black on, clown mask on and like a red wig.
Subject dressed in a red and yellow suit with a clown mask.
And the reason I bring up the phantom clown sighting thing is just last year, there was a very similar phenomenon. There was this mass hysteria of these evil clown sightings all over the country, all over the world, actually. And cops were patrolling neighborhoods, and they were closing schools.
At least in our area, they closed a couple of schools.
Yeah, you told me that. A school your little sister went to was closed because there was an evil clown sighting in the area. Which to me is like closing a school because there's a Slender Man sighting in the area.
It was, I think, actually it was a crackhead or something.
In this area? Yeah, probably.
But because of the scary clown thing that was going on, the story just spread and it was a scary clown. Phone tree.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a big part of it. Once upon a time, a person trying to lure a child into a secluded area by dressing as a clown would make sense. But now, today, do kids even know that clowns are supposed to be funny?
I don't think so.
For a while there, Ronald McDonald was the last non-ironic clown in existence. But in the last couple of years, McDonald's have phased him out in a lot of ways. And a lot of it has to do with this evil clown hysteria. Today, the clown's default mode is evil. Recently, with the new It movie, there were actually real clowns who were protesting it, saying, we're really annoyed that destroying the public reputation of clowns. Which is so funny. It's like, man, I think you guys need to change your career.
Yeah, really.
Here's another weird clown-related murder. In 1990 in Florida, a woman named Marlene Warren was supposedly murdered by a clown. A person dressed as a clown came to her door and shot her. And the murderer was never caught. It's an ongoing mystery. Just imagine Robert Stack talking about that.
Yeah, whoever Robert Stack is.
The dude from Unsolved Mysteries.
Oh, that guy.
Why do you think there are so many evil clowns in pop culture? Why do you think this idea has just struck the zeitgeist and is refusing to go away?
Because people are tired of zombies.
Like I said, there are a lot of killer clown movies. Most of them go direct to video. Most of them are not good. There are even several franchises. Full Moon has their own killer clown series. Killjoy, never seen any of them, but considering it's a Full Moon movie made after 1995, it's probably terrible.
Right.
There's a series called Jingles or Mr. Jingles. They did 2 or 3 of those. Fear of Clowns, there were 2 of those. Those were all direct-to-video films. In my eyes, there are a lot of low-budget horror films that take a regular slasher movie killer, put them in clown makeup, and then stop there. And I think it's because it's a really easy makeup to do. It's a really easy costume. You can go to any costume shop in the country and find a creepy clown mask. And for a certain portion of the population, it's going to work. There's a percentage of the audience that will be freaked out just by the mere sight of somebody dressed as a clown. That is why there are just so many evil clown movies. A couple I can think of where the killer is just dressed as a clown. It's not a part of the film. It's not incorporated into the story in any way.
That's stupid.
Out of the Dark was one. Afraid was one from a few years back. There are a lot of them. There are a handful pretty good clown movies out there.
It was a night like any other night. Then something happened. Something different. Why here? Why now? Why clowns? They've been knocking them dead all over the universe. Soon they'll be doing it at a theater near you. Killer clowns from outer space. It's crazy.
pinnacle of this particular subgenre. One of the greatest achievements in evil
Cinema history.
a film I'm very fond of, Killer Clowns from Outer Space from 1988. This movie is the same age we are, bro.
Killer Clowns.
Now, first off,
Out of space.
just that title. Remember the days when horror movies had really kick-ass titles like that? If you were going to the movie theater and you saw Killer Clowns from Outer Space up on the marquee, there's no way you're not seeing that movie.
Right? Be the smart ass be like, you spelled clown wrong.
They spelled it with a K for that alliteration there. This movie was a passion project for the Chiodo brothers, who are a trio of special effects guys specializing in stop-motion effects. The fact that this was made by special effects guys is evident in the movie because this was a low-budget film. I think they made it for $10 million. And the special effects are really good. The set design is really awesome in this film.
Yeah, and I love it how it's an 80s monster movie set in a 1950s monster movie town.
Yeah, it's almost a parody of 1950s creature features, you know?
Yeah.
Plot is extremely similar to The Blob. The old man who sees the aliens come down, and you have the teenagers, police don't believe them at first.
Popcorn? Why popcorn?
This movie, it really exaggerates those characters to the point where the old man is a super goofy character with a basset hound named Pooh Bear. Or my favorite is the town sheriff, played by John Vernon, who was the dean in Animal House, made a career out of playing roles where he was mean to teenagers, who is just the biggest asshole in the world. Inconsiderate and mean to everybody for no reason.
Yeah, Mooney.
He does get probably the nastiest death scene in the movie. One of the clowns turns him into a puppet.
Goes elbow deep.
Yes, right. Really.
And I love that their weakness is their nose.
Right, yeah, you have to shoot them in the nose and then they explode, which is brilliant.
The weapons are cool.
That's one of the things I love about this movie. It takes its absurd premise and extends it to its logical extreme. I think this is best displayed in the scene where the clowns pull up to the local carnival funhouse where they're hiding their ship, throw cream pie at the security guard, but it's an acid cream pie and the guy melts into a mound of slush. One of the clowns walks up and puts a cherry on top of the melted pile of human flesh.
Yeah, that's cool.
They travel around in a spaceship that looks like a big top, and then at the end of the movie we find out that it is a literal giant spinning top. Yeah, you mentioned the popcorn guns.
Yes, and the cotton candy.
Yeah, they wrap them up in cotton candy, and then they drink their blood, and they drink the blood
Out of a crazy straw.
out of a wacky bendy straw, yeah. There's so much stuff like that in this movie. The directors were making this film, they had a list of clown stereotypes, and they hit every single one. They make a bloodhound out of balloons to track people.
And then he gets run over by a car. Why do they always kill the dog?
Even balloon animals getting hurt upsets you.
He's still a dog. He was alive. He was sentient.
Death scenes in this movie, I mean, they're more like gags. The little guy boxes the biker, knocks his block off.
Yeah.
Or the scene with the shadow puppets is amazing.
Oh, yeah, one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah, I think it's a PG-13 movie, so it's not especially violent. Goes for it, man. It does not hold back from that premise. It really exploits the concept as much as possible.
And I like the demonic, echoey clown laugh.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird, distorted clown laughter on the soundtrack. Those creature designs, even though this movie is clearly farcical, it's obviously a horror comedy, if not a full-blown parody. You said you know at least one person who is genuinely frightened of this film.
Oh, Cody. He's terrified of clowns. He won't watch this movie at all.
This is a really entertaining movie to me. I watch it and I think it's hilarious, but I guess there are people out there who, holophobes, would just find this the most terrifying film in the world. Those designs are great. The clowns, they are stretched and rubbery and grotesque looking.
Yeah.
And as I said, I love the production design inside their ship. It looks like a fun house. Everything's very brightly colored. The budget was up on the screen. And we have to...
And hey, we met the couple in that.
Yeah, we did at Horrifying. Years ago, we met the two lead actors in this. Suzanne Snyder is the girl, and she was...
What's his face?
I'm sorry, I do not remember the male actor's name. We have to mention two things. First off, we have to mention Clownzilla.
Oh my god, Clownzilla.
It's
amazing.
I don't know how these madmen convince somebody to fund this movie, but ending your movie about evil clowns from outer space with a giant clown who's got leathery crocodile skin, so he looks like a kaiju. Goddamn, the balls. And then the other thing is the theme song by the Dickies, one of my favorite bands. Fantastic.
Killer Clowns.
Yeah, great pop punk song. Really love it a lot.
Outer space.
Almost 3 decades now, the directors have been trying to get a sequel to this movie made. I remember reading rumors, this was like 2002, rumors that they were going to be shooting a sequel in Europe, and it's going to be called Blood-Sucking Clowns from Outer Space, which is a pretty good title. And then more recently, they announced that they were going to do Return of the Killer Clowns in 3D. This is a franchise that I think a move to 3D would actually really make sense. Neither of those movies got funded. I think it's just an issue of money and time is hard to carve out. I don't know if we'll ever get that sequel, but I would love to see it.
Hey, you're gonna like it down here. See you in your dreams. Oh, come back anytime. Bring your friend. I'll kill you all. Have every nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
Have you seen it?
Haven't seen what?
You know it.
What?
You know it.
What are you talking about?
It. Have you seen it?
What it?
God damn it.
Wait, you're damning it now.
Damning what?
There's this movie. The American title for the Mario Bava movie, Whip in the Body, was What? And somebody needs to make a movie called Who, and they can all play at the same triple feature. What do you think of that 1990 miniseries version of Stephen King's It?
It's alright.
Have you seen it recently?
No.
It aired on ABC. It was originally intended to be a 10-hour miniseries, and George Romero was going to direct it, and I would have liked to have seen that version. Before the new movie came out, I took the time to read the original Stephen King book, which is very long. My copy is 1,090 pages. There's no way you could do the story in a 2-hour movie. Having now watched the miniseries, even a 3-hour, I didn't really think was enough time. I definitely would have liked to have seen that 10-hour version. Instead, it was directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, previously of Halloween 3 and Fright Night 2. Well, you know, some people like those movies.
I mean, Halloween 3 has grown on me a little bit.
I've never actually seen Fright Night 2. I hear it's not very good.
It's awful.
Yeah. In many ways, this original miniseries has become iconic in its own way. Part of the reason why the new movie has become such a huge hit is because so many people have such fond memories of this original miniseries. If you were kids when this came out in 1990, now you're in your 20s or 30s, so you have that expendable income. What is it about, JD?
It?
Yeah, what's it about?
It.
Okay, yeah. Well, it's set in a small town in Maine called Derry. Every 30 years, people begin to die, usually children. The film begins in the 50s, where a group of 11-year-old youths, all outcasts, they call themselves the Loser Club, all come together and confront the force behind these murders directly. And they think they kill it. Now it's been 30 years and it has returned. If you're going to adapt that book into even a 3-hour-long film, you're going to have to do a lot of cutting and condensing. All the backstory of the town of Derry that you get in the book is gone. Most of the subplots are gone. Pennywise, the dancing clown, has become this huge figure in horror culture. Actually, in the original book, he plays a pretty small part. The titular it is not the clown most of the time. Usually it takes the form of whatever the kids are afraid of. Because of the 1950 setting, that's usually classic horror monsters. It turns into the Creature from the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein and Dracula, and the Crawling Eye, and the Teenage Werewolf. All these things appear. You get a little bit of the werewolf in this 1990 version. It's mostly been removed. And all the cosmic stuff is totally gone. Watching this movie now, I saw it when I was a kid. I watched it from underneath of a blanket. I was very, very creeped out by it. Did you have that experience watching it as a child?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty effective as a kid.
Yeah, but going back and watching it as an adult, you realize that it is horny as fuck.
The only thing it's not going for is Curry.
Really, 100% I think that's true. Tim Curry is fantastic. When Romero was going to direct this movie, they were considering Roddy McDowall or Malcolm McDowall for Pennywise. Either of them would have been really good in the part, but Tim Curry is just amazing in this movie.
Georgie.
That opening scene, if you just made that a little short film, there's your whole movie right there. The highlight of it. Playing this evil demonic clown allows Curry to ham it up as much as he wants, which is always a joy to watch. And yet at the same time, he always has the sinister edge to him. He really makes the audience understand that Pennywise is someone who enjoys frightening children and really relishes it. Otherwise, there's not too much I like about this movie because a lot of the special effects are really bad.
Yeah.
The giant spider at the end, actually the design is pretty cool. It moves so stiffly. It's not a convincing puppet when it's moving. In the book, the bully that pursues the kid, Henry Bowers, is this really frightening character. He's this young, budding sociopath. And in the movie, they just turn him into kind of a generic greaser. What ends up happening to him, how his hair is turned white by the shock he experiences in the... That doesn't happen in the book. It's really, really a cheesy thing. I think there are one or two decent shocks in this movie. The scene where the blood comes out of Beverly's sink is a good moment in both this one and the new one. And there's some cool stuff with the balloons I like. And the fortune cookie scene is good. You remember anything much about the cast in this movie? Other than Curry, I mean?
John Ritter.
Yeah, John Ritter plays Ben Hanshank as an adult, and I think he's really super miscast. Seth Green is in this movie.
Yeah, he plays one of the kids.
Yeah, he's Richie, and he's super annoying. Emily Perkins, who would go on to star in Ginger Snaps, appears as young Beverly, and she's pretty good, but I find a lot of the actors in this movie are miscast. Harry Anderson from Night Court plays Richie as an adult, and he just is terrible. He mugs it up terribly. It's one of those scenarios where in the movie, this character is supposed to be this very successful, hilarious stand-up comic, but as you're watching it, you just think, this guy's material is terrible. Nostalgia plays a big role in why this film is so popular.
Derry's not like any town I've ever been in before. People die or disappear 6 times the national average. And that's just grown-ups. Kids are worse. Way worse.
We all float down here.
I saw something. There was this...
Clown. Yeah, I saw him too.
It's all connected by the sewers. That's where it lives.
If you'll come with me, you'll float too.
What about the new one?
I really like the new one.
I was apprehensive when the trailers first started coming out. I thought, oh man, this looks like typical slick studio horror movie. It's going to be full of CGI and jump scares.
Which it is.
Not actually an inaccurate description of the film, but it ended up working for me. The movie had kind of a protracted development. It was originally going to be made in 2009 with a filmmaker named Cary Fukunaga. He directed the first season of True Detective, which people really like. I still haven't seen it. But he left the project, and the movie was directed by, I believe he's Argentinian, a director named Andres Muschietti, who made Mama, which I also have not seen, but some people seem to like. You said it was okay.
That's alright.
You know, it's already been a really big hit. That sequel is absolutely, definitely going to be getting made.
Oh, yeah.
That speaks a lot to just how beloved Pennywise has become as a horror villain. People were really eager to see this character on the big screen. Some of the adaptational changes they've made, they've moved the setting. In the miniseries, in the book, the kids are young in the 50s, but now they've moved the setting forward. So now this first film is set in 1989, which is sort of an interesting idea, moving it forward into the 80s. As an adaptation, they really do change a lot of things. A lot of the narrative mechanics are very different. A lot of characters are changed. But I would say that this is very faithful to the spirit of the book.
I know it scared me a few times.
It does have a couple of good shocks in it. The scene with the projector is the best jump scare in the movie, where Pennywise comes out of the projector screen and chases the kid across the garage.
Yeah, I think I actually said, oh shit.
Yeah, I think that was the only time the movie really made me jump. I just didn't expect him to come out of the screen and be giant. And there are a couple of good scare sequences. There's a scene where Ben is chased through the library by a headless corpse. Pretty effective moment. I liked that one. I found this to be a surprisingly fun horror movie. Most of the horror films that get wide theatrical releases these days are pretty grim. It was nice to get one that was actually fun, which is weird. It's a movie about a clown that eats kids, but it's actually a pretty fun film. There's a lot of humor in it, and there's a lot of heart in it. It really does capture this kids on an adventure feel. And after stepping out of the movie, I kind of felt the same way you do when you step out of a good carnival funhouse. Feel like you've had a good shock, but you're kind of elated. You had a good time with it.
Yeah.
And the cast is excellent. All the actors playing the kids are really, really good. Not really familiar with any of them, apparently. Finn Wolfhard, which is an amazing name. He plays Richie, and apparently he's on Stranger Things.
Yes.
Still have not seen that show.
Still need to watch it.
I really love what they did with Richie in this movie. The actress playing Beverly, Sophia Lillis, is really good. Jaden Lieberher plays Stuttering Bill, really captures the character. Love the whole joke with New Kids on the Block.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really did a spectacular job casting the movie. But what about the new Pennywise? What about Bill Skarsgård of the Skarsgård clan as Pennywise?
He's alright.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
He's no Curry.
He's not as good as Tim Curry. He does some things that are sort of interesting. I don't know if this was a digital effect or something he did, but he frequently doesn't focus his eyes. Gives the impression he's a marionette being controlled by some other far-off force, which is a pretty accurate description of what the character is, but he relies a little too much on the creepy clown thing.
Yeah.
Tim Curry as Pennywise really just looked like a normal clown before he sprouts the teeth and the claws anyway. This Pennywise, I can't imagine any kid looking at this clown and not being immediately intimidated by him.
Georgie wasn't.
Georgie wasn't. That took me out of the film a little bit. This obviously evil clown appears in the sewer grate, and the kid's reaction is, oh, hi.
Smell kids are stupid.
Well, yeah, I mean, they talk about that in the book. Stephen King writes some lines about how if he had just been a little bit older, he would have ran, but because he was just that right age, he didn't say anything. Bill Skarsgård is good in the part. I like Tim Curry's Pennywise better. The film is really well directed. It is a modern studio horror movie. It has that look. It's both very slick and very dusty. Definitely a lot of CGI. The direction is just a little mannered at times. But overall, it worked pretty well for me. Anything that you didn't like about the movie?
Beverly. I really didn't like their take on that character.
I was fine with the take on the character up until the end.
Well, that's what I mean. How they handled her.
Yeah, they turned her into a damsel in distress in the last act.
She does still deliver the final blow, which kind of saves it.
No, it bugged me.
The damsel in distress thing.
And the only reason I can think they did that is that it would parallel some of the things that may be happening in the second movie. Didn't like that. Two of the losers, Stan and Mike, got the short end of the characterization stick. And that's just, I think, the fact that you're adapting a 1,000-page novel into a 2.5-hour-long movie. Some characters are going to come up a little short.
Right.
But I do wish that Mike had been given more to do. And overall, I found the last act of the movie to be just a little disappointing. The way they defeat Pennywise is kind of underwhelming. Beat the shit out of him until he falls down a hole. Would have liked to have seen something a little bigger.
Yeah.
I did like the movie a lot. It was a lot of fun, and it was a pretty good adaptation, and the cast is great, and it's well directed. It did get me a few times. That's always fun to see. Totally on board for the next one, for Chapter 2.
Shut it, you.
No, you shoot it. You're not me, Dad.
Sure, I might be.
You've got a front row seat to my comeback show.
Are you trying to be funny?
Not anymore. Everybody happy? Where do you think you're going?
Just for the record, not every party ends with a dead clown.
You have two more killer clown movies that I made you watch on Netflix. The first of which is from 2012, and it's called Stitches. This is an Irish film. It's directed by a filmmaker named Conor McHannon, and it's a starring vehicle for a stand-up comic named Ross Noble. And I had no familiarity with this guy before seeing this movie. And after watching it, I looked up some of his stand-up on YouTube, and it's very manic.
Okay.
He's not super manic in this movie. His performance is actually controlled. He's pretty good.
Yeah.
What I really liked about Stitches is, like I said, there are a lot of killer clown movies that just put the killer in clown makeup and end it there. But this one reminded me of Killer Klowns in that it really does incorporate those elements. The clown does clown shit when he's hurting people.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about the plot for this one a little bit?
Kid has clown for birthday. Clown gets there late, in bad mood, acts like an asshole.
Dies horribly.
Kids fuck with clown. Clown dies horribly.
Yeah, and then 6 years later,
Gary Clown ritual in the graveyard involving an egg, which is a real clown thing.
Yeah, that's what you said, that there is some weird ritual with clowns and eggs. I thought they made that up for the movie.
No, the clown painting his face on the egg thing, that's real. The symbolism of it all, fuck if I know. But I can tell you that they really do paint their face on an egg.
And this one, they turned that, there's kind of like a weird, creepy clown cult, which I loved. I thought that was a hilarious idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then 6 years later, the kid's now a teenager. He's having another birthday party, and Stitches rises from the grave for revenge. Obviously, this is a horror comedy. Comedy is pretty crude. It begins with the clown fucking a girl in his trailer.
Yeah. And she's like, fuck me, clown.
You know, I'm sure somebody out there has that fetish. I have no doubt. The scene with the kids at the birthday party, the kids are cursing and puking. And then when we get into high school, of course, the kids are still using very colorful profanity. That streak of crude humor is balanced. The horror stuff that's played just right enough.
Yeah.
So it balances out well.
One of my favorite gags in the movie.
The kills are great in this movie.
Well, this isn't a kill gag. Is when he pulls off his nose and says, sniff him out.
Yeah, I loved that. That was so cool.
And they did that twice in the movie.
Yeah, and then the cat eats it.
Yeah.
Both of these movies have an animal eating a clown nose.
Yeah.
Weird. Pulls a rabbit out of somebody's throat.
Yeah. Makes a balloon animal out of intestines.
That's one of the best ones. He disembowels a guy and then ties it into a balloon animal. And then inflates his head with the bicycle pump until it explodes.
Yeah. And most of the effects, by the way, are practical.
Very little CGI in this. He rides on a little tricycle at one point in a chase scene, which is great. Cracks open a guy's head and scoops his brains out with an ice cream scooper.
And then pours strawberry sundae topping on top.
Right. All the kills have an ironic quality. Something the kid did back at the birthday party is sort of turned on him. And I always like it when a movie does that. And then my favorite death scene in this involves an umbrella. So over the top. When you think it's done, it keeps going even further.
They're laying there dead.
Right.
And it's like dead silence, and it's, okay, that's a pretty cool kill. And then all of a sudden, fucking umbrella bursts open and throws blood everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
They went there.
Yeah, they took it to that next level. So if you're just into cool, inventive death scenes, I think Stitches is one you'll definitely enjoy. The cast is pretty good. Like I said, this Russ Noble guy, I have no familiarity with him, but he's a pretty good evil clown.
Yeah.
And I thought most of the actors playing the kids were pretty good. Gemma Leah Devereaux plays the girl he has a crush on, who is this really cute goth girl. The kids really acted the way real teenagers act in this movie, and I enjoyed it.
They might have been real teenagers.
I don't know how young the actors are, but they definitely look the part. I didn't really go into Stitches expecting anything. I figured this is a direct-to-video evil clown movie from 2012. It's probably terrible, and it's actually pretty good.
Well, it had a pretty decent production quality for being direct-to-video. I'm wondering if maybe it was like mass release in Ireland.
Yeah, I'm sure it had a wider release in Ireland, and I think it actually did have a limited release before going on video and Netflix over here. It's a good little horror comedy. End it by teasing a sequel, as these things frequently do, and I would actually be up for that.
Oh yeah, I'd be down to clown with a Stitches sequel.
I'm so glad you finally said I'm down to clown. It took us almost the whole episode to get there.
I knew you were waiting on it. I was just keeping you in suspense.
There's no clown coming.
Who double books a clown?
I thought you had a backup.
Everything's gonna be fine. I physically cannot get it off. It's suffocating. I can feel myself changing.
What happened to my husband?
It's not a costume. It's skin of a demon.
No matter what I say, don't let me out.
We got another low-budget, independently released killer clown movie here, and this one is just called Clown. It was made in 2014. I don't think it was actually released on domestic DVD until last year because the Weinstein brothers do not have their shit together these days. In 2010, a filmmaker named John Watts made a fake trailer that had the exact same premise about a guy who puts on a clown suit, then can't take it off, and it turns him into a clown the longer he has it on. And at the end of the trailer, it said it was produced by Eli Roth. Now, Eli Roth had nothing to do with that trailer. The director just put his name on it because Eli Roth's a really well-known horror filmmaker. That fake trailer actually actually got back to Eli Roth, and he loved it, and he called to the director and said, hey, let's actually make this movie. And now, John Watts is directing fucking Spider-Man. Clearly it worked out for him. Pretty neat little film. Though it does begin with a rather unlikely point. A modern-day child, 6 or 7 years old, the modern-day kid who actually genuinely loves clowns. And as I said earlier, I do not think such a thing exists. Anyway, it's the kid's birthday. Clown calls the mom and tells her he has to cancel. Luckily, not so luckily as it turns out, the kid's dad, Kent, is a real estate agent, and he's currently refurbishing an old house. He looks in the attic and he finds a vintage clown suit. Says, hey, I'll put this on and go to my own son's party as the clown. However, the next day, he discovers a bit of a problem. He can't get the suit off. And then after that, his body begins to change. Then after that, he begins to have disturbing desires.
Right, and then after that, he gets hair in places he's never had hair before.
Yeah, he's turning into an evil clown, is basically what's happening. And you know what's...
With rainbow blood.
Yeah, you really like the rainbow blood.
I love the rainbow blood. That is such an interesting concept. I don't think we've ever seen rainbow blood before this.
Fits the theme. This is another movie that really does actually run with the clown thing, though in a very different way than Stitches did. Would you describe this as a horror comedy?
No, it's pretty straight horror.
Some of the earlier scenes are kind of funny. When he's trying to get the suit off, he uses a handsaw, and then the blade ends up breaking. But as it goes on, it goes to some really dark places.
He's actually eating kids and then puking them back up.
It goes there. Alternate origin story it presents for the modern day clown, I thought was a really cool spin on things. This movie, you discover that the clown as we know it today is actually a bastardization of an ancient Scandinavian demon called the Klowns. And they even explain how its skin was white because it would live in caves, and its nose was bright red because it was blistered from the cold, and it would lure children into its cave and eat them. And after eating 5 kids, it would go back into hibernation. So it's kind of like it in that regard. For the years, what was known as the Clown evolved into the modern day frivolous figure of the clown. Sort of the way that fairy tales have been sweetened up over the centuries.
Question is, how do they explain the ice cream cone for the... Because I must have missed that part.
The full evil clown has this horn that comes out of his head that does kind of look like an ice cream cone. I don't know, man, you're supposed to go with it. There's an element of body horror in this, which I really like. His fingers stretch, he coughs up his own teeth, which is a super gross gag. One that's funny is when his feet swell up to clown shoe size.
Yeah.
Earlier, we were talking about, one of the things I think people dislike about clowns is there's sort of this implicit fear that they're pedophiles.
Right.
And I think this movie really does
run with that.
Yeah, incorporate it. At the beginning of the film, this Kent guy is a happy family man, and then after putting on the clown suit, he's overcome by these strange desires. He feels a ghastly attraction to children, and he tries to fight this, but eventually he is consumed by it. And he even goes to places where kids are common, like this Chuck E. Cheese stalking this place for kids. It's almost a sympathetic viewpoint of that kind of condition. It's sort of interesting to look at it from that angle. Somebody who has no control over this thing, but they can't help it.
Right.
I didn't really pick up on that the first time I watched it, and watching it now for this episode, I really caught that and thought that was a very clever take. By the end of the movie, it really does develop into a full-blown monster movie.
Yeah.
I knew if I could get you to watch it, you would like the ending, where he turns into full-blown latex rubber monster clown.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. Anytime you get practical effects monster in a movie, it's usually catnip for you. And for me, too. Who am I kidding?
You see it so rarely anymore. And then even when they do use practical effects for monster makeup, they still digitally alter it somehow. And I'm sure some of this was digitally altered, too. It was mostly practical.
Well, maybe during the flashbacks or when she's watching the footage on the camera. I feel like there's a lot of practical effects in this. And some pretty crazy gore at the end when the clown is almost decapitated, but not quite totally.
Yeah.
And it's still alive and they have to yank the head off. That was cool. This movie
Great gore in this movie.
Yeah, the gore is really solid. One really fucked up scene where they're, I don't even know what you call them, the big plastic tube at the Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, the
kind of a jungle gym type thing.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's a jungle gym.
They have a chase scene in that, and you see a kid's torso tossed through the plastic pipes. That was actually a really effective. I never would have thought a chase scene set in the big plastic tubes at Chuck E. Cheese would be tense, but it actually works really well. And
it has great atmosphere.
It does. It's a well-made film. The cast is really solid. Lauren Allen plays the wife. She's good. Andy Powers plays the clown, and he's really good in this. I have no familiarity with either of them. The only name I really recognize in the movie is Peter Stormare as the clown expert. Anytime he shows up in something, he's great.
He's just the kind of asshole that would talk through a wire jaw.
Not a lot of expectations for it, and ended up being surprised by how much I liked it.
Yeah.
You never know what they really are.
The circus can be the main event for many a young boy. But for Casey, all this clowning around is about to come to an end.
And like I said, there are a lot of other killer clown movies. One that I can sort of recommend is a movie called Clownhouse. It's a pretty effective 80s horror film, lots of atmosphere, surprisingly tense in spots. But there's one problem with the movie. It was directed by Victor Salva, who will go on to make Jeepers Creepers franchise. If you're watching the movie and you know nothing about the director and its backstory, you just go, that was a pretty solid horror movie. But if you know that Victor Salva is a convicted child molester, convicted for molesting the actor who starred in this movie, and then you notice that he has a lot of scenes where he's in his underwear or in the bathtub or something, that kind of makes the movie uncomfortable on an entirely different level. Yeah.
I didn't watch that.
On the stage of life,
some opera singer went wacko and killed his leading lady.
7 students just got a part.
You're on the big stage now.
To die for. This time,
clown may be amusing in a circus.
It's murder.
What would be your reaction?
In 3 acts.
To opening your door and finding that same clown on your front step at midnight.
The Clown at Midnight.
What time does the matinee start?
There's nothing funny about him.
And there are some other ones. I mentioned The Clown at Midnight. Actually is a pretty solid post-Scream slasher. And that one's cool because the clown dresses up not as a modern-day clown, but as sort of a Harlequin-style clown. Old-style European clown. Got a surprisingly good cast. Margot Kidder and Christopher Plummer are in it. I wouldn't tell you to go in with high expectations or anything. I actually thought it was okay.
What would you like to order today? Do you want something meaty? Do you want it bloody? Would you like fries with that?
It was a 7-foot clown chasing me with a meat cleaver.
Why would someone dressed as Horny the Clown want to hurt your children?
Order up a slice of horror. Drive-through.
Fast food kills.
And then one you like is Drive-Thru, which is basically a slasher movie where the slasher is Ronald McDonald.
Right.
Which I think is a cool idea. I haven't seen the movie in years, but I remember being pretty...
You were supposed to watch it.
Well, you were supposed to watch a lot of things for this episode, weren't you, JD?
I worked all weekend.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, you had 2 weeks.
And I had other shit I was doing.
Anyway, yeah, I don't remember liking Drive-Thru very much, though I'll admit I haven't seen it in years. You and I were talking about this earlier. This is something I watched on FearNet back in the day. And I don't know if our listeners overseas had FearNet. It was basically a network devoted to horror films, but we never got the network version here. We just got it as an on-demand channel. And at the time, I never thought much of it. Some of the movies were edited, and the selection was just okay. Thinking back on it now, I do kind of miss FearNet.
Yeah, I miss it a lot.
Anytime you wanted to watch a horror movie, all you had to do was click on your TV and go to the on-demand network, and they usually had something you had never seen or heard of before. And no guarantee that it would be good, but at least you'd never heard of it before. You could be surprised by something on FearNet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Drive-Thru I don't remember much about. I remember thinking it was kind of an obnoxious, typical modern slasher fic, but you said you liked it.
Yeah, I liked it. I wouldn't say it's like a great film, but I liked it.
That it is a good premise. Ronald McDonald is a slasher. Somebody should do that with the Burger King. That was our short little Killer Clown retrospective. Hope you got some laughs out of it, or at least some shrieks. If you can contact us, you can do so at www.facebook.com/thebangersandmashtshow. Anything else you want to say, JD? Don't go in the sewers.
We all float down here.